Wow, well, this is incredible. And Michael, I know it's kind of you're so busy these days. I don't want to hang on for too much longer with you, but maybe you could just wrap up for people, given the context of the day, the question of freedom, because we've talked a lot about this. You have an amazing website called shellingzone.com, I believe, or .org. I can't remember which one it was. We'll link it, where you talk about the idea of freedom, and being that we're in this time right now, and our freedom is being threatened externally by external forces. You've always had a lot to say about the idea of, again, the freedom coming from within and being the ground of being, and what the solution really is not necessarily just always looking for these external forces to somehow grant you freedom. You had a wonderful statement from years back that stuck with me, which was that freedom is not something that the world is ever going to give you. Freedom and meaning, those aren't external. Freedom is something that is a gift that you give yourself. I wondered if you could maybe finish with a little bit about that concept for people.
Yeah, it is. And again, that's something that's a bit counterintuitive, because you remember, I was just talking about society's conventions. We get so sure that other people award us that it comes from outside, that in the end, it's a slap in the face to what really freedom is all about. And my mentors have always said that people don't want freedom. So that's why you don't have it. We invent the governments in the shadow of the government, because secretly we don't like what freedom entails, what it allows us to do. So there's making baby steps along the way. And there were certain philosophers, there were idealists as well, who made freedom essential. Like, it was the footprint of spirit. That's how important it was. And the whole idea that you have the freedom to not do the right thing. Say you're a Christian, right? You have the freedom to break all God's edicts if you wanted to, or you have the freedom to obey them. But freedom then must be akin to the most important of the virtues, since you can do one or the other. But nobody's really worshiping freedom. So what happens is that freedom is always there, but in the background. And what your Hegels and all wanted is a society that has it in the foreground all the time. That palpable, even amongst the hedonists who are misusing freedom. But of course, that was sabotaged. Their philosophy, Marx came along and other things, and they totally sabotaged that particular. They've really defaced it. It was actually Immanuel Kant that first sort of set the ball rolling. Oh my goodness, the amount of disfiguring, and I'm sad to say even Ayn Rand, in my opinion, picked it up wrong. I understand why. It's because she was such a freedom lover in her own life. She thought that what Kant was talking about smacked of collectivism, and that set her off. But there's no doubt about it that she misread Kant, which is not hard to do, by the way. Right? Awful writer he was. So yeah, there's all sorts of different interpretations to that. But I think that, yeah, it's such a vast subject to get into that one. But what's happened is that we have allowed these warlords and psychopaths in government to award us something external, when in fact it's attitudinal. See, they don't have freedom themselves. It works out this way. Those psychopaths, they have billions, so they have a certain freedom, right? But they don't really have attitudinal freedom, because they're slaves of the paradigm. They're not open-minded people. And so they then say, you give us the reins, we'll take it. You give us the white squares of knowledge because you won't stand on it, we'll occupy the squares. But deeper than that is that if we don't even love the freedom that we have, it's like this, if we are slapping freedom in the face ourselves personally, we're defiling it, then isn't there something very insipid about saying, government, give me freedom, I'm a lover of freedom, look at my placard?
Yeah.
So when I look at the world, I'm going, all I see is haters of freedom, haters of wisdom. It's called misosophy. Look that one up. But I also see haters of freedom. But all these haters of freedom are running madly going, give us liberty, equity.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's such a contradiction.
Who the fuck has climbed out of the asylum fucking window, down the goddamn drain pipe, right, and running in the street saying, trying to pretend to you, because this is how it works. And then government comes along and goes, you lovers of freedom, you guys who have definitely, you're responsible for yourselves and you love freedom, We'll give you, every 4 years you can come and vote. So this is where the philosophy equals the politics. Lovers, haters of freedom, and those who've given up their responsibility for self-ownership now have to compensate and create, from a persona point of view, that they're the brother's keeper. They're super responsible for the ecology and everything, the poor. We call it voting every 4 years. So when you line up for that, and most all of politics is born out of haters of freedom needing to compensate or displace, it's also called. And in that, the political world will never fall. It's made out of the cement that holds the bricks together of the whole political, meaning government. See, so anarchists can throw all the petrol bombs and bricks they want. The wall still stays there like something looming in adamantine. And that's because you haven't found the tiny little, you don't know where to unplug it. The whole thing can go over like the tower struck with lightning if only you knew the psychology behind it. And that is it. It's what Erich Fromm called that freedom from freedom, escape from freedom. Central to him, he was a psychologist, German psychologist. And to me, I've never seen any evidence to disprove that. So the journey must start very, very early on, where it's in a parenting sort of sphere where a child, growing child, has learned to become a hater of freedom. Not a lover of freedom, not a lover of wisdom, but a hater of it. That they will then immediately become a social entity and a political entity as opposed to a philosophical entity. So, this is another, one could talk endlessly about this because it is in our streets again today. But part of the lie mechanism is that everyone points to the government as if it's doing something bad, when in fact it's saving you. It's saving your persona. It's saving the appearances. The person who lives in a lie, this is the dynamic of the lie. They create the very edifices to control them so that they can have an external blame. And that's ramped up. This particular psychological syndrome has ramped up recently. That's how it is. And all those ecologists, they're all Gnostics. They're pseudo-ecologists. I love the earth and I love animals. I would consider myself a deep ecologist. These people have co-opted something very profound that came out of Heidegger, actually. Heidegger is the creator of ecology. Did you know that? Mm. So, yeah, a Norwegian guy called Arne Naes, who was a student of Heidegger, took it on and made it into the movement. So it had genuine concerns, but it was soon co-opted by the left. That's the political side of it. But when Al Gore is up there, just like Bill Gates is today, or the World Economic Forum or the Club of Rome, talking about external environments, just like when Al Gore did it, and now they're doing it again. Watch out for that. Even when Bill Gates and other people are drawing attention to your physical body, to physical illness, be very careful. There's a ritual going on. Sorcery is happening to you. Because all of that rhetoric, once properly decoded, remember we said everything was an allegory and a metaphor? The metaphor that they're really, behind that insider smile, and they're killing themselves, by the way, but is that they're talking about your psychological temperament. But they're doing so in words repackaged to be, it's the environment, it's a planet, she's dying, or no, it's you've got viruses, bugs, it's your biology. Yeah, not psychology. So when you watch the movement of history, especially in the 20th and 21st century, this is how you can identify, what the cognitive sort of dissonance is at that point. And, the remedies are not easy, because the remedy is to turn around and face your psychology and get into psychology, as opposed to, biology plays a part in that. And in your extended society, of course, plays a part. But if you've left out the real core of the issue, which most people have, there's not even hardly anybody in this whole movement who deals with psychology, in the way that I do, in the healthy way. And so, unfortunately, then you lay yourself open to the greatest tyrant. But again, the main point is this. If you have murdered freedom and desecrated freedom in your own private heart, then there's all the sin in the world telling me that you're waiting for big government to give you, you just can't wait, and you're dying and you're pulling your hair out and you're like utterly, incensed by the fact that there's no freedom in society and freedom in this. If I diagnose you and you have desecrated freedom in the Kantian way that he says people do, then you will scream as loud as you want for external impositions of the freedom, and you're living in the word. It's purely that word in the dictionary is what you're living in. You're living, which people do. They live in the words: freedom, equity, justice, human rights, humanity. These are just words. They absolutely only words. But you've got people who are educated now who can think no further than that. There's no reality at all. It's just a simulation. They're a simulation. They become plastic, and they want to live in a plastic world. And so the freedoms that they're yelling for and screaming for, that is because they've actually committed the greatest crime against the true capitalized freedom, because they don't want it. It's distasteful to them. And the story of that, of course, then goes back to parenting and society. That's what we try to unpack on Enslaved pretty much constantly, because it's a message that really is hard to grasp in the first place. I know that. So one has to go very, very gradually, and it's slowly people get it.
That's profound. That changed a lot for me when you brought up the whole thing about Al Gore talking about climate change, and we got Greta Thunberg out there, and then you got Klaus Schwab talking about we need a great reset, and Mao Zedong used to talk about a great leap forward, and
That's right.
They have all these words and terms that you think have to do with the economy, with disease, with the planet melting down on your head, but it isn't any of that. They're talking about, yeah, we need to reset your brains so that you're all programmed in our matrix. We need to, the climate is melting down in your consciousness, and we're going to take advantage of that and build you back into our temples and our rituals. And like, there's a way that we have to understand this. And then when we understand what they're doing, realize we're building if our immune system on an individual level for freedom and consciousness is low, then it gives rise to these tyrants. The tyrants aren't just there. They come in the vacuum of us not doing the inner work to actually be free from the inside out, not from the outside in, right?
Yeah, and if we were doing the work, we wouldn't have government. Do you know what the best thing for the economy? Get rid of government. It's that easy. So why is it not done?
Yeah.
Get rid of government. There's plenty of people who know how to hustle and build and sell and buy and show you how to do all of those things. We want those mind-forged manacles, you see, and only a psychological person could ever work out why. This is the most extraordinary thing. And so all that's happened recently is that it's just ramped up. Freedom was offered, a measure of freedom was offered, and people didn't want it. So they came up with whatever they possibly could. They want to live under draconian times. Yeah, it's really remarkable, but it's in here. But then in here is also the compensation. You're in shame, deep existential shame, because you know that you're doing this to yourself. So then comes the modes of compensation and displacement by which you showboat around that you're waving the flag of freedom.
There's all this virtue signaling stuff and the masking and all that.
That's it.
Yeah.
And the political milieu who knows this goes, give it to him, give it to him, give him that pen. Quick, organize it. Give him more money. Let them open more green societies. Hey, we'll talk about, So now more than ever, the individual has been militarized, weaponized in a political, and they ran amok. All you saw the running amok that's what it was. It was literally trying to use that muscle. But these are all necrophilus, hair trigger, disciples of Crowdism or whatever. The most evil cult that's ever existed is the crowd, and they make a beeline for it, because now that you've sold out true freedom, you've got to cluster with other. Part of the compensation is a cluster with other people who are doing the same thing. But as I analyzed in other programs, there's a violence involved. It's exactly the same metaphor we just used with freedom. The one who's screaming, running around the world looking for money and funding and approval to fight violence is the most violent creature in the world, because they've done an act of violence to themselves by joining the crowd. So why would I look at somebody who's done existentially and psychologically one of the most violent acts, which is lose oneself in the crowd? And that's not even rightly said. It's not so much, that is a form of violence. I mean the urge by which they get up out of their bed, make their little placards and run out and down the town. There's a definite violent urge that is, see, we would have to widen, the whole world would have to widen, because we're only in the crowd. And when we're in the crowd, we lose all the things I'm talking about. We have to still, in our 21st century, widen our understanding of violence, because it includes all definitions but this. A man's violent desire to enter into crowd consciousness is an act of violence. Therefore, that person who is now violent, deeply violent to themselves and to the conscience, entering into the crowd screaming for a world without violence. End the violence over there. Look at all those violent people. I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but that doesn't sound very right. Now, I know that not one person is going to ever be cured by this, but the truth is the truth. I don't serve people. I serve the truth, and that is the truth. And whether they like it or not, or whether they acknowledge it or not, or whether they're going to face it or not, or ever change, so I'm not a political entity. I don't care. Right? I'm a psychological entity, and this is the fact. This is the diagnosis. But the doctor never gets in the bed with the patient. So, I know my limitations. You just put it out there, and if somebody gets it, they get it. If they don't, they don't.
Well, and what you're saying is the solution, right? That's the whole point. I mean, we called it unslave for a reason, to unslave yourself from the tyranny around you, whether it be government and corporations and monopolies and secret societies, or whether it be the crowd that's always trying to pull you into the lowest common denominator to be like them, to erase your individuality. This is why we go into the idea of the hero. We talk about that on the show a lot, the hero's journey, about how to live a heroic life. And to find it within yourself to be authentic and be honest on this path. And when you're free within, they can chain you to as many walls as they want. I mean, as far as I'm here trying to do what I can, so we don't have to live in full-blown communist dictatorships. In the end of the day, it all starts with the foundation of you understanding that you are free. Free people don't ask permission from tyrants like this. They don't ask permission. They don't wait for the government to go, oh, am I allowed to not wear my mask anymore? Am I allowed to go around without a passport? Or like, they don't wait. They're free. And it's just a matter of that has to start within. So just brilliant, man. Just brilliant. Look, we'll have to do it again sometime. Getting lots of love in the chat. So much to get into. I'm encouraging people to go and check us out on Unslave. We do a show there every single week. As well as there's boatloads of premium content on there and presentations and articles that you can check out. So go hit us up at unslave.com. And Michael, if you have any parting words, let us know. But thank you so much for joining me here today. It was a blast as always, mate.
Oh, it's great. I love talking about these subjects. And it's always great for the opportunity to do that and also clear the head a bit, because I've been so tunnel visioned on the work. But yeah, Gnosticism too. Magnum opus coming out real soon this week, hopefully. So people stay tuned for that.
Really cool. Really cool. Well, thanks again, man. I'll let you go. I'm going to do a couple announcements for my listeners, but thanks again. And we'll catch you guys on Unslaved another time. All right. Cheers, Michael.